Well, as Israel is still reeling from this terrible attack, joining us to discuss the situation in Judea and Samaria is Lieutenant Colonel Maurice Hirsch of the Jerusalem Center for Security and Foreign Affairs. Maurice, thank you so much for joining us today. Always a pleasure to have you on. Now, we've just heard about the fight against terror in Judea and Samaria. Thousands have been arrested already, yet attacks are still happening. What can Israel do to better prevent these kinds of attacks?
Well, I think there are a number of different operations that Israel can carry out, whether they be tactical or strategic. I think understanding really the motivating and driving factors behind the terrorism. It's Hamas. It's the prevalence of weapons that are available in every house in Judea and Samaria. It's the fact that the Palestinian Authority, despite having had tremendous training and financial assistance to build an effective anti-terrorism security apparatus, has really done nothing, and instead their terrorists are part of the fight against Israel. These are really tactical things that can be done and strategic options that must be put on the table to understand what's driving this terror forward, what's providing really the cover for the terrorists, why hasn't the Palestinian Authority stepped up as it should have done, and what Israel must do as a result of that.
Now, can you give us an overview of some of these terror groups operating in Judea and Samaria? What kinds of threats do they pose to Israeli civilians? And is this all part of the fight against Hamas, or is it even further beyond that, what we're facing in Judea and Samaria?
So in Judea and Samaria, we're still left, putting aside the October 7 massacre, we're still left with really the plethora of Palestinian terrorist organizations. It's Hamas, it's Palestinian Islamic Jihad, it's the Al-Aqsa Martyr Brigades of Fatah, it's the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, and really all of these different organizations trying to carry out their mission of murdering Jews. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing that on the ground every single day. These cells operate in a not in a sporadic way, but rather in a very coordinated, very clear way. They are funded both directly and indirectly via the axis of terror from Iran. They are provided with weapons. Every week or so we hear about the arms caches that have been seized, for example, trying to infiltrate Israel from Jordan. And that's only really the ones that we catch. What about all of those weapons that are basically flowing freely without being intercepted? That's what's fueling the terrorism. That's what's allowing the terrorism to continue on, and really the cover that they're provided by the Palestinian Authority.
Now, what is being done to stop some of this funding, the flow of weapons to terror groups in Judea and Samaria? You mentioned they're trying to get through that Jordanian border, specifically the Islamic Republic of Iran. What steps are being taken that you're aware of, at least, to stop this?
So I think we've seen, and really the IDF did report it probably about 4 months ago, the idea to set up an entirely new division that will focus solely on the Jordan Valley and prevent that porous border with Jordan from being used and abused by the terrorists as a means to smuggling weapons. We've seen this obviously in Gaza with the tunnels underneath the Philadelphia corridor, and we're seeing that the terrorists really are very creative in their thought patterns, how they can smuggle more and more weapons in to the terrorists in Judea and Samaria. And so that's something which the IDF has put really as one of its top priorities, creating this new unit that will be solely focused on that. The other operations that are being done, which I think are somewhat lacking in their aggressive approach, is stopping the flow of money. How is it that money is still flowing to these terrorists, that they're still receiving money? How is it that we're still allowing the Palestinian Authority to continue funding and really rewarding the terrorists for their terrorist activities? These are things which Israel needs to do. Rather than just fighting each individual terrorist on the ground, we need to develop a much more complex plan for cutting off terrorism at its legs, whether it be the flow of weapons or the flow of finances, And that's something which I think Israel is still somewhat lacking in its actions.
Now, before I let you go, I want to ask you about the role of the Palestinian Authority. I know you've done quite a bit of work on the pay-for-slay policy, in which the Palestinian Authority literally pays terrorists for their acts against Jewish civilians, Israeli civilians. What is the status of this deal, and why isn't the Palestinian Authority doing more to combat some of this terrorist activity in Judea and Samaria, where they do have relative control in comparison to Gaza, which is under Hamas control?
The answer is simple, Emily. It's because the Palestinian Authority does not necessarily disagree with Hamas, is interested in continuing on the fight against Israel. If you look at anything to do with the Palestinian Authority today, the media is awash with citations of 77 years and 78 years of the Nakba, the catastrophe that they call Israel's creation. The Palestinian Authority still denies Israel's right to exist, denies Israel's right to exist as the nation state of the Jewish people, and they are the ones promoting terrorism. So you cannot expect them to promote terrorism wholeheartedly on the one hand, but at the same time fight the terrorism at the same time. They have common goals with Hamas. They might disagree as regards the exact timing of every terrorist attack, but their goals are the same, the destruction of Israel, and therefore our expectations of them should be really in alliance with what exactly their goals are.
Absolutely. Well, unfortunately, we're out of time, but Lieutenant Colonel in the Reserves, Maurice Hirsch, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me.